Hello and welcome back to another Island 54 development stream where I am working on a survival crafting MMO. Uh, I have been, I took a day off yesterday because I had, as always, some other stuff that I had to work on. Um, I had been working on fixing some bugs in the way that, looks like it might have crashed. Um, Bear with me, sorry. In the way that it was placing items on the terrain. Particularly where there were slopes. So I will just demonstrate where that's been fixed. Oh, I will check my Reddit random guy. I have to admit, I don't get back onto Reddit as often as I should. Uh, yeah, so who won? I will be announcing the winners in when I finally get this episode out that I've been working on for far too long. Um, um, oh, and look at the capitals. Yeah, I will go and actually look at that properly. So that I'm not sitting there trying to work out which ones are capitals and which ones aren't while I'm on stream. So I'll have a look at that later, random go. Um, yeah, I see the look at the capitals bit. So I will do that off stream so that I don't accidentally blurt it out. Um, all right, so here we have my latest iteration of terrain generation, which I did show off last time. So I've got the oceans, the beaches, and now these items are not hovering above the ground. Trees are also being put mostly on the ground. You can see that there's a little gap, possibly you can see this little gap just under there. That should be fixed with modifying the model so that the trunk goes down into the ground a bit more. So it's all looking a lot better. The problem I have now is as I finished up my stream on Tuesday, I suspect I have an issue in my netcode causing it to, you can even just see here in the distance, it is drawing some items that should have been unloaded. And I suspect I'm never generating the deletion requests. Now, I was going to debug something off stream and I got called away. I can't remember exactly what I was debugging, unfortunately. So I'm literally just getting back into this from where I finished off the last stream. Let's look at what a chunk invalidation request has on it. And we can see here that it has a coordinate and the type. Now, over in here, I have separated out dynamic and static entities. And I'm not sure that I really like this approach. I'm going to leave it in for now. At the moment, I am treating it as, whenever a chunk invalidation comes in, I'm treating it as a message saying that I have to go out and fetch all of the entities. But what we don't have here is the ability to delete an entire chunk worth of stuff. So I am going to modify this protocol. And I've mentioned before that I don't like modifying these numbers here, but I'm willing to do it at the moment because I have sorry, I just changed, my brain went off in a completely other direction. Okay, I'll try forming this thought again. Yeah, I don't mind changing these numbers now because I've not deployed anything. I've not given this code, given binaries to anyone else. So the issue is that changing these means that clients can't communicate with servers that have already been deployed. So because I'm just restarting everything from scratch, I'm fine with that. So what I need in here is another parameter, which allows me to pass an update type. Now, what this will let me do is this will let me set this to either invalidate or delete. So if a client gets a message for a given chunk and it tells it to invalidate it, then it can go off and fetch the entities. If, however, it gets one that says delete, then it won't go and fetch those entities, and instead will just delete all the entities that are in that chunk. I think that will, there's no way I could have got this code working without this protocol change. So the next thing I'm going to need to do is sorry, just trying to find another window. Yes. Okay. Yeah, so I'm going to change my code now to actually populate this field. So anytime we send one of these chunk invalidations, we need to make sure we're populating update type. And before we do that, I need to actually recompile that code. So I run yarn, tell it to do a protoc, and then copy the C# file out into my C# code. There we go. That will have updated both ends of that. Now I need to find where I reference this. Here we go. It's referenced in the datagram generator. No, it's not. Let's delete those. It will be referenced in generate delta, right? Really? Code not living here. Here we go. Yes, it's in the client game state, which is a thing that actually navigates the entities and asks the generate delta to generate the individual diffs. Now, I remember now what I was looking at the end of the last stream. I couldn't find any code I have here that will send through deletion requests. And the problem there is generate delta is designed to, if we come into generate delta and do a search for delete, we can see that this is able to generate deletions, but it only ever does it if we have a source component, but not a destination component. So if this is equal to undefined. Now, coming back here into client game state, I call generate delta. How many times do I call this? Apparently 3 times. Oh no, it's twice for the import, and then we call it in here. The problem is, this is actually going through and looking at the entities that the server thinks the client should have. What I'm never doing is going through and looking at the entities that the client has, but the server doesn't know it has. Or the server doesn't want it to have. And they're the ones that should be deleted. So the issue here is entity is never going to be undefined when we make this call. So I need to work out how I'm going to do that. Most of this code can stay as is. We do need to invalidate the chunk properly. Where do we do that? Chunk coordinate, static only. Yes. Chunk invalidations. Yep, getting there. Where do we actually spit that out? It must be in the generate message, right? Here it is. we need this to be invalidate. Why do ghosts love elevators? I'm going to have to think about that one. Something about another level? No, don't know. Why do ghosts love elevators? A slight change I made to the stream settings today, by the way, is I have, on YouTube, I've slightly decreased the latency. I didn't realize that my latency setting had reset when I created the new channel. Because they lift their spirits, I like it. Okay, so we set that to invalidate. Over on the client side, we need to actually process that. Pending chunk invalidations. This is applying the results, don't care about that. I can't remember where this code lives. Well, if I come in here and do a search for chunk invalidation, go. And then this will have a coordinate somewhere on it. Handle new invalidations. Yeah, here we go. Welcome back, Metal Store. Currently changing my protocol so that the server can instruct the client to delete large sets of entities. But this needs to do more than this. It needs to do it if it contains that key, and the invalidation.update type is update type dot invalidate. This Metalstorm, this is, I have to admit, I kind of forgot what I was working on at the end of the last stream. I got pulled off onto other things. And this will, I'll fix the issue with the updates going through as part of this same issue. So I confirmed just a moment ago that it is not ever sending deletion updates through to the client. It just never checks for entities that it thinks the client has that it doesn't want the client to have anymore. So once I've got those, I'll be able to get it to actually delete those items. Now, why it wasn't moving the rock once the rock was put back down again, I can't yet answer. So hopefully it'll all just come out in the wash. We will see though. So for now, I have added an extra parameter to my invalidation messages so that they can be either invalidated or straight out deleted. Okay, so that's going to go and handle that. I'm also going to do a message dot chunk invalidations dot where borrow this bit of code here. I might as well have just copied the whole lot like that, but this is going to handle deletions. I don't want to do select. I want to do like an each. C# stream select where for each. This is what I want. It's been massively downvoted. Okay, I'm just going to use a loop. Okay, so what this is going to do is it's going to go through, find all of the invalidation messages that have a delete in them. To do implement chunk deletion. And then this can also, for now, I'll just do a log. Oh, I can't type. Chunk deletion not yet implemented. So we can at least see the messages come in. Okay. So now what I need to do is I need to update this piece of code just here to not only search over the entities, but just like the entities that the server wants the client to have, but the full set of entities that the server wants the client to have and that it knows the client has. So let's do all entities. Let's just make it a set for now. Then we need to, so that puts all of the server-side entities into that set. Maybe this isn't quite what I want. Because of how equality probably happens, I'm not actually sure how equality is done in a set. I should probably be storing these in a map instead. So let's actually feels a little bit wasteful. Dimensions as in like dimensions of reality. Yeah, I do have some ideas around that. So I presume you mean they're like in Minecraft, the end dimension and the nether. Is that what you're referring to there, Random Go? As a game idea? Yeah, so I've got some ideas around dimensions. So there's an idea in the book series Wheel of Time where uh, they use dimensions in Wheel of Time. There's no spoilers here, I don't think. They use dimensions to fast travel, basically. Um, and I can't remember the exact mechanic in Wheel of Time, but what I'm planning on doing, which is heavily based on Wheel of Time, is having this idea of different dimensions being a scaled down version of reality. So as you pass deeper into the dimensions, you would be able to travel faster because you'd have a scaled down version of the world. Um, so that's one thing that I've considered doing to give some form of fast travel without implementing teleport, which I think is a bit too OP in a game like this, where I want trade to be quite central to the game. I don't want people to be able to just teleport all over the place. This dot client state. How do I get the? Okay, this does it by chunk and then entities by ID. I'm not sure this is what I want really. Do I ever really do chunk by chunk processing? If you change your mind, you're welcome to then, random guy. This dot client state dot, I need an object values on that. So that's going to give me a list of objects. It's going to be like this. Well, how about I actually just assign that to a variable so I can see the type? Introduce a local variable, temp, explicit type. Yep, so it's an entities by ID. All right, no spamming though, random guy. With the when your word has that little meaning, it makes it a bit hard to get anything out of it. All right, so on here, I'm going to do an object dot I basically want to flatten this, so I'm going to need to put a reduce on that. Flattened, comma, IID. We go to, okay, let's just get rid of that. Entities by ID is what? Entities by ID. Okay, so I have an array of these objects. All right. So we're going to return what we already had. And these items. This is just a regular flatten. So now my type should be entities by ID. Yep, there it is. And then I just want to put those into all entities. So let's do a dot. Why won't that let me? Oh, because that's just an object. I can't iterate an object. I'd have to do an. What is entities? Entities is just an array of entities. Okay. So what I can in fact do in here is flattened entities. I'm actually going to make this an array of entities. Makes sense in a moment. That as entity array. And in here, hello again, random guy. Flattened entities and object.values. No. I want to do this conditionally. Oh, hello, Misty Kitten. Sorry, I did not see that was a different username. Welcome to the stream. I'm not sure if you've been in before. Currently working on a survival crafting MMO. I'm just fixing a bug in some of my netcode at the moment. So this is definitely going to be a serious performance issue. Doing well today, Mr. Kitten. It's kind of mid-morning for me here in Australia. All right. I'm going to need to store this as a map. The reason is that I can then index it by its ID, and that way I can only put a single item in here, whether it's an item being stored in the server or an item being stored in the client. So what I will then do is just iterate over the entities. Thanks for subscribing, German Shepherd Lover. Welcome to the stream. I think that's a YouTube subscribe, I think. I should get a sound effect on that. Or do I just not have my sound turned on? The sound is turned on. Entities dot for each. Okay, so for each entity, I need to put it into the map. Dot. Really? How do you? Oh, dot set. Entity dot ID. Entity. Okay. So at that point, our entities, all entities contains all of the, what? It contains all of the, yeah, it's for each ID, it's got the entity. But now I need to go through each of the client values and insert them into that list. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to overload the name here, all entities. This will pass in all entities. I don't normally like doing this. If it'll let me do it without a warning, then it's fine because I know that these are actually the same values. And yeah, my day is going well. I have coffee. My children are at school. Nothing more I could want. All right, so we've got the entities by ID. Object dot entries by ID for each. Then we can go ID entity. Okay. So this horrible chunk of code is basically saying take everything that we think the client can see and grab its ID and the entity for that. And then all we need to do is say, what do we want to say? This is all wrong. It's frustrating. I can't just put these into this map because otherwise I'll be overwriting, well, either overwriting the server's copy or losing knowledge that the client can see it, but the server can't. For people who just joined the stream, the issue I'm trying to solve is when an item gets deleted from the game. I'm not currently sending an update through to the client. So one way of fixing this is going to be all entity IDs and make this a set. Yeah, this is going to be better. Entities dot for each. We're then going to say all entity IDs dot add entity dot ID. In fact, we can just make this an ID. Change this to an ID. There we go. All entity IDs, all entity IDs. Excellent. We don't need the entity. I can just remove that. This should be a set. Why is that not a set? Because I'm not returning. That. I'm not much of a fan of mutating the results that comes in, but I don't know of a better way of doing that in TypeScript. There's a slight performance benefit here anyway by using the mutation. It doesn't have to do as many copies, I don't think. All right. So at this point, all entity IDs should have a set of all the IDs, whether they have just been deleted by the server and the client still knows about them, or both sides know about the entity, but it may or may not have changed, or the entity has just been added. So next what I need to do is an all entity IDs.reduce. For each values, that's what I want. Do I reduce on a set? What's the standard pattern for that going to be? Node.js set reduce. All right, let's do that. Array.from. Take the index. We're going to take the ID, which is a string. Sorry, I missed some comments here. Yes. Yeah, so Metal Storm points out that if you want to do anything tricky about which items get sent through to the client to prevent cheating, basically, if a client can't physically see an item, you shouldn't be sending that item through to the client. And doing that is tricky. Yeah, it's not just fog of war. It's also you know, if an item is inside a building that the person is standing next to, then you really shouldn't know about it. Um, yeah, and yes, you've talked about the building specifically. Um, yes. Um, Welcome back, Griffic. Glad you could make it to another stream. Apologies for all the confusion with the me trying to find a way of streaming that doesn't annoy people that don't want to see the streams. Yeah, I am just ignoring the issue of visibility for now, uh, but I will have to do it at some point. I'll probably use a number of kind of cheats by working out when things are kind of in a room type of thing. So there'd be another property which is not just the coordinate of something, but what room it's in, and then use that to determine whether or not something should be sent through. Because I don't want to have to do uh, raycasts for this piece of code. I want this just to be able to do a query off to the server and say, just return things that the client can see. Oh, it's an exciting time. It's always an exciting time, Griffic, when you start a new job and moving for that matter. I think it's meant to be one of the most stressful life events, moving, and one of the most stressful life events you can have. I seem to remember hearing. I always find it exciting myself. Been a while since I've moved anywhere though. Okay, so the server entity is going to be yeah, I wouldn't use flood fill. Uh, but I'd be caching it and very much using the Hoxel system to do it. So it would only ever have to be done when Hoxels are changing or when structures are changing. But yeah, I don't know. I haven't thought too much about how I'd implement that. There are ways other than flood fill using convex hulls that can give you whether or not a shape is enclosed. Entities.id. All right, so we've got a server entity. Really? Oh, still don't have an index of these things. This is frustrating. Um, yeah, I don't think it's too bad, Griffic, um, if you imagine it in 2 dimensions. It scales to 3 dimensions. Um, but um, if you if you look up how to determine whether or not a set of lines is part of a closed shape, and from memory, I think you can do it using convex hulls. You need to do some other stuff to handle concave shapes, which obviously you could have. Um, but I don't believe it's too bad. It just breaks down into breaks down into a sub problem to work out whether or not the convex bits, the concave bits are enclosed. Yes. Yeah, I agree with that, Metal Storm. It depends obviously on exactly what you're trying to find. Um, at RestreamBot. Sorry, this is I've got Stream Relay turned on, so it's always going to look weird when people on YouTube and Twitch are talking to each other. Apologies for that. I will be moving from Restream sometime soon. I'm going to move over to Streamlabs because Restream's just had so many outages lately. This needs to be... Oh, what did I just press? No, go for it, Metalstorm. You chat away about what you're working on. I won't necessarily reply to it all, but yeah, feel free to chat away. That is meant to be server entities, server index. Yeah, I do like encouraging people to talk about stuff they're working on. It's one of the things I like seeing. So, one issue I have here is I don't currently have any form of client index. This is all just absolutely horrible. I'm just going to build it on each frame. Um, entities by ID is going to be empty. It's so non-performant. So a lot of this code will go away is the good news, because a lot of this is just being done to look up the client entity, which my horrible indexing code up here is making simpler. So I think we can get rid of any calculation of current chunk. We just don't overly care about which chunk it's in, do we? We might. Down here. All right. Famous last words. This should never happen. Attempt to, what are we trying to do? Generate diff for non-existent entity ID. That really shouldn't ever happen. I just want to be very clear about the condition though. Why doesn't it like that? Cannot redeclare. Oh, that's okay. That will go away in a moment. Yeah, these big back-end systems do take a lot of work. But I think it's worth it once you've got it working. I wish there were an off-the-shelf thing that just did this, but was able to scale. Okay. If Yeah, I'm really surprised at how little game development there is on Twitch. There's they the closest category they've got is like software and game development or something. But if you go and look through it, it's like 90% just general software development, which I find really surprising. A lot of sort of traditional client server, web server stuff that people work on. But yeah, I've not seen a huge amount of game development. Surely this is easier. Hang on. I think I've found why the rock didn't get put down properly. Metalstorm. Uh, just writing this code is making it obvious to me. The I think it's going to turn out to be the fact that it's changed across chunk boundary. I'm not sure how this code is going to handle something changing across chunk boundary, uh, which is an issue. I think I might need to reduce my dependence on the concept of chunks in this particular piece of code. Yeah, I mean, how big are my chunks? They're like 17 meters across. Yeah, that is pretty unlucky because I did only move it across a meter or two, didn't I? I might not be right. This might not be the issue. But in here, I'm going to prefer the server location. So the server location, I think, is the location I want to use for indexing. Um, yeah, so let's just do server entity location or the client entity dot location. Now, I believe I can guarantee that one of those two will be set. I probably shouldn't rely on it because the guarantee is going to be in some other piece of code. The thing is, we are fetching entities with a location query at this point. So if we have a server entity, it should have a location. If we don't, then we will have a client entity. And I think that guarantees that we have a location. I don't know what will happen with inventory items there. So let's just keep on going. So in here, I think we can just say location, then do a new one of those using location. This will crash if my assumption is not correct. Grab a chunk key. We already have the client entity, so there's no need to look that up. Generate delta. Oh, whoops. What does it expect? Oh, that was totally wrong. No, it wasn't. Client entity, server entity. False alarm. The bug, Graphic, is that when I was demonstrating my so I had fixed a bug where I was putting entities too high. They were hovering above the ground sometimes. And I fixed that, and in just demonstrating the fix, I was trying to place an item on an incline, and the I had two players in the game at that point, and the players couldn't see each other manipulating items. And I think that the particular test case I was using, I only tried to pick up one item and put down one item, but I think that I was trying to put it across chunk boundaries, and I'm not sure that this code will handle that properly. Right, so we grab an update. So this is the actual delta. We then grab and we update the index by ID to include this update. So this is just for each ID that we've generated an update for. What is the actual delta? This could be deletions, or we delete or update. They're the only valid types of update at this point. Then that's all okay. That's okay. Okay, so if we have too many updates coming through in a chunk, then we collapse those down into an invalidation message. There we are, adding the invalidation message. However, we also need to handle the case where we are either updating or deleting. We need to separately handle cases whether we're updating or deleting things. Uh, hmm. Now, I only want to send through a delete if everything in a chunk is being deleted. I think that's true. I can't imagine a situation where, if you had 200 items in a chunk, that all of a sudden 195 of them would get deleted, but 5 wouldn't. And if that were the case, then you'd want to do it. They would have actually been deleted. So you do want to do that as an invalidation at that point, not a deletion. Nuke? What do you mean nuke, Graphic? Oh, sorry. I guess what I'm trying to say, yeah, you're saying, if hypothetically, if a nuke were to go off and destroy lots of items, that is fine, and this code here will actually handle it. So if you delete 195 out of 200 items, then we will try sending through 195 deletion messages. And when it gets to, I think it's the sixth one, it'll actually say, there's no point in sending through all these deletions. Let's just tell the client to go and refetch that entire chunk. When it refetches that chunk, it will see that there are only 5 items in that chunk. And so that will actually work. The piece of code, the condition I'm trying to do now is if you have 200 items in a chunk and all 200 get computer just locked up. I don't want my client to go off and refetch that chunk because more than likely those items haven't actually been removed from the game. They're just not visible to the player anymore because the player's gotten out of range. So I want it to send through a different kind of request in those cases. Now, I'm just not sure the best way to express that in code, given the data I have available to me. This is basically doing an unload. So I've extended my protocol to support the concept of the server telling the client to unload something. I don't want to, well, I can't just depend on the client doing it, because the way the server is generating these diffs, it will even look to the server as though those items have been deleted. Because at the start of this generation function, it goes and fetches all the entities that the client should be able to see. And that means that it will, it'll see that those items aren't in range anymore, and it will try to delete them. So I just need to know, can the server see anything within the chunk? See, it's easy for me to do like client state chunk key dot length. And this I think the client can see. But I want to say that if the server can't see any items, but the client can, then don't even come in here. Don't consider sending any updates through. And I think that to do that, I'm going to have, oh, is my computer locking up? I apologize if things get choppy here. Something is going wrong with my machine. My stats all look good on OBS still. I do apologize if I go choppy in a moment. I might even just try restart IntelliJ. Okay, that I think has improved things. Not sure what happened there. My machine is looking more responsive. Yeah, so if I do go choppy, I'll see what I can do. I'm just gonna see if I've got anything looking suspicious in my process list. Unity is taking up a bit of processor. Memory, Unity and Rider are using a lot of memory. Yeah, all right. Yeah, sorry about that, random guy. Something was going wrong with my machine. I think that I just needed to restart IntelliJ. It had been running for like 2 weeks or something without being restarted, so it doesn't overly surprise me. All right. So what I need is a server-side index by chunk. Now, I will need to take a break in a few minutes because my coffee has run dry. So I will take a 5-minute break very soon. I'll probably just get this index issue sorted out. I'm just going to do const server entities by chunk. This is all so non-performant. I'm just, as I've said, I'm just not worried about it at the moment. Chunk key is going to be a string. Can I ask what kind of work you do, Griffith? I obviously assume development, but yeah, you have to say anything else about what kind of stuff you do? Server entities by chunk. I need to get a chunk key. Ah, awesome. So you're doing game development. Very cool. I wasn't sure if you were doing game development professionally or not. Pretty cool though. Sounds very cool. Okay, server entities by chunk. It doesn't like this. Why not? Let's just do that. I know this is all ugly. I just want to see this stuff working. In Unreal, awesome. I got to say, most of my work stuff is in Java and JavaScript, as in like React. So yeah, Java and React, Java backend, React front end, and I really miss the days of C++ development. I absolutely love developing in C++. Server entities by chunk. Server entities by chunk. I've got to pull this key out. I can do better than this if not chunk key in server entities by chunk. Is that allowed? I can just do a dot push. All right. Multiplayer VR. That sounds like fun. Okay, so I can now look up for a given chunk how many items it has in it. But even better, I can say if sorry, I do need to open an editor just to capture a thought. Any invalidations am I actually really sending through? Sorry, I'm concerned that this piece of code here might be getting called multiple times. And I think that could result in this being generated multiple times. I think it's not going to happen. Well, it would overwrite itself, so that might not be the end of the world. But yeah, I do just want to make sure this code isn't running hundreds of times. Okay, so if chunk key, if not chunk key in server entities by chunk, then we know at this point that we are going to be deleting everything. Now, if there are only a few items in the chunk, we should allow it to go through. So let's just go and it's getting a lot of nesting in here, aren't I? Let's write this code first. So if there's nothing in there, then we do want to do the same code. Just going to copy and paste all of this and collapse it, refactor it in a second. To do refactor is to get duplicated. Now in here, we're going to call delete. Yeah, this here is a problem. I'm sure this is being called multiple times. I have to admit, I did, in my last stream, the breakpoint on the client side, I think it was, I had a breakpoint on a message, and I noticed that my packets were getting up around the UDP MTU size, which surprised me, given that it was only sending invalidations. But that would make sense if it's sending through a couple of hundred packets, a couple of hundred invalidations, which is not what I want. All right. I've got my note taken though. So I don't need to register a chunk invalidation in this case though, because the client is never going to, we don't need the client to explicitly acknowledge this chunk invalidation if it's a deletion, because we know they're going to process these synchronously. They're not going to go off and fetch anything. We do, however, need to store against the message ID the fact that a deletion invalidation was sent through, so that we can apply that. So let's add another field in here, which I'm going to call deleted chunks. Where is it? index.deleted chunks or empty and chunk key. There we go. I'm going to put a to-do in here. Check if this chunk has been invalidated. If the chunk that we're about to process has already been invalidated, then there is no point in running any of this other code. And in fact, we don't want it to, because we don't want to generate multiple deletion invalidations, and we don't want to register multiple invalidations. Okay. So the last thing I need to implement here is when we're handling an acknowledgement, handle ACK from client with respect to chunk deletions. Just going to make a note of that because I'm going to fix all of these compile errors. That actually means we always have deleted chunks. So when I do that bit of code I just wrote, this one, I don't need this. Type unknown is not assignable. This is probably an error all the way down the bottom. Init value, no. Ah, I've got another return somewhere, I bet. It is. Deleted chunks. It's going to be index.deleted chunks. Yeah, as I said, I do need to refactor this. Still not happy. Return, return, return. And I've probably got another one somewhere. Yep. Still no good. PS value is unknown. An index is always okay. That one has deleted chunks, which is an array of strings. That one has a deleted chunks, that's an array of strings. It's fine. That one's fine. This one is not. That doesn't sound like... No, that one is. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. This is why you shouldn't have 100-line reducers, isn't it? Okay, if I remove the explicit typing on these, Oh, I'm surprised that didn't give me the typing at all. Okay, anytime I return anything other than index, I am going to be absolutely explicit about the type. Okay, there we are explicit. So it's definitely returning an entity index. That's returning an entity index. That's, oh, I'm already doing this. TypeScript. Um, let me think. This is the return I just added. I think. Yes. I guess if I delete that, does it all come good again? No. Might have to look at this error message in more detail. I hate these error messages, the overloaded ones. Okay. No, before I look at that, what about just a TypeScript typing error, Graphic? It's it doesn't like these types here. I've not changed them though. Well, I've added a field onto onto entity index called deleted chunks. It's just a string array. But other than that, I've not really changed much. I'm explicit about all my return types inside this reducer. Oh, hang on. What's this? That's a set of unknown. I got it. Catch you around, Metalstorm. I appreciate you staying up late. So the issue here is I'm using a set, but this should be a set of string. There we go. We compile now? Yes, we appear to have gotten all of the... Oh, is that... Nope, almost. I think I had an undefined in there. No, so I didn't make the new field optional, but that's fine. I updated all my return values. But the issue... yeah, I just had the wrong type on the set that I was enumerating. Yeah, sorry about the lag here. I think it's only about 4 seconds though, the lag. I had it set a lot higher than that accidentally, but I found the setting on YouTube this morning to reduce the lag, so it's only about 4 or 5 seconds. Same as Twitch. Twitch and YouTube have about the same lag now, same latency. Okay, so what did I put in my document that I was about to do? Handle the ACK from the client with respect to chunk deletions. So let's just find the relevant code. Process acknowledgements. Nope, that's not it. Generate message. No, that's not it. Oh no, here it is. Apply message ACK. Yeah. So when we apply the message ACK, why is server ID and client ID different? They're not different. They are actually the same, just that I have 2 copies of the actual entity data itself. And yeah, so the IDs themselves aren't different. They're based on what comes out of Mongo. So I don't actually have control over it, but the client and server do agree on it. The issue is that sometimes there'll be items that the entity wants the client to know about, but the client doesn't know about. And then there's the cases where the client knows about something, but the server doesn't want it to know about it anymore. So that's what all that code is doing, is it's just handling the cases where items are missing from one of the two sides. Entry equals whatever for each one. I think I have that graphic, if I understand what you're talking about there. Where's entity index? No, I don't. So you can do a default value in a uh, you can do that, can you? No. Not quite sure what you mean. I know you can do it on a function level, but type or I'm going choppy again. The choppiness. I can make it with string values. Uh, the only issue there is my enums are not true enums. They are protobuf enums in Now,